Hey everybody, today I want to do a quick video on the Nintendo eShop closing for the Wii U and the 3DS. And this is another one of those things where it's not exactly shocking that it's happening. It's kind of expected at this point, especially considering how long ago the Wii U stopped being popular. Not that it ever was popular, so not much of a shock. We're well into the, Nintendo Switch life cycle now, and not that that seems to be slowing down. I'd say maybe we're approaching the latter part of that cycle, but I kind of don't think we are. I think that's doing so well that I think that'll be around for quite a while still. I think we'll see some updates to it, like we just saw the OLED version, but I don't think we're going to see that going anywhere. The Wii U, though, and the 3DS, those consoles are dead. Unfortunately. Well, unfortunately for the 3DS. The Wii U, well, good riddance. And I had a Wii U. I liked the Wii U, actually. Then the novelty wore off. The Wii novelty, okay, it was something new. The Wii U, that novelty wore off quickly. But nonetheless, let's get down to the point of this, and that's the eShop closing and no longer being able to purchase those games for those consoles, which is a bit of a unfortunate. Not for the Wii U games or the 3DS games per se. For the stuff that you can't go buy at a store. We're getting into the era now where a lot of games were only available on the eShop or similar digital marketplaces. Same thing with like Xbox and PlayStation, all, where there's quite a bit more that's not offered on physical formats now. A lot of indie stuff and that kind of thing. And that's going to be a shame of the whole thing, is when a console generation dies, a lot of those games are kind of die with it. I mean, I'm sure they're going to get brought back through, some, not hacks, but yeah, basically, some modifications. I'm sure somebody will come up with some different things you can do for the Wii U. There's already a lot of stuff out there you can do, much like with the Wii. But it's a shame that Nintendo makes it so hard. That's one of the biggest frustrations with Nintendo for me, is that Nintendo really makes it so hard to play their old games. And one of the biggest problems for the eShop was when the Wii came out. That was a kind of a turning point there with the online marketplace. Having Wii channels, which were very underutilized, but you did have Virtual Console and the eShop and all that stuff. WiiWare. So you did have, for the first time, where you could go online and purchase previous games. Now, a lot of those games were extremely overpriced for what they were, but at least those games were available again, and not just through some rehash, which is, I guess, what this all usually comes down to. Nintendo usually would release, take a look with the NES, they later release versions, those games, a lot of them for, for the Super Nintendo through, we had Nintendo All-Stars, and then you saw them re-released again, in a lot of cases on the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. And then when the Wii came out, it made it possible to just go online and download a game, and that was kind of a new thing for Nintendo anyway. Microsoft and Sony, well, Microsoft had already been doing it. Sony, with their PS3 came out around the same time. And that's when that really got popular there too. With that generation of consoles, that was the first real generation where we saw going online, purchasing stuff, and that shift to digital, internet becoming possible to the point of being able to download a full game. Before that, you saw a lot of people with dial-up and with very slow DSL, not very possible to download a full game. It's just not practical. This generation was the first that made it possible. And by the time the Wii U came out, that whole digital marketplace had been well accepted. Not that everybody liked the idea of everything going digital, but it was mainstream. So this is really going to be the second generation of consoles here with these online marketplaces. And one of the things that makes me hesitant to buy digital games is because of what Nintendo did here. When the Wii came out with WiiWare and all that, no one really knew what was going to be the future of those platforms. Were these games going to just be on the Wii? Were they going to be, backwards compatible on future machines? And unfortunately, we found out that really, no, they're not backwards compatible. Nintendo's not going to allow those to be played in the future. And that's, I think, like I said before, that's one thing that definitely keeps me from buying more digital content. Because from one generation to the next, you don't know if that's going to be able to transfer over or not. If they're going to allow those games to come forward or not. And with the Wii U, that was really the case. And same thing with the Switch. Those purchases that you made did not transfer over. Unlike with Xbox and PlayStations, where if you make a purchase, let's say I made a purchase let's say I bought, I don't know, I'm always stuck on Mafia, so let's talk about Mafia 2. If I made a DLC purchase for that on the Xbox 360, I can go on my Series X and still utilize that. It's backwards compatible. There's no issue whatsoever with using that. Same thing if it was a game that I purchased on that console, I could still download it as long as it's compatible with the new machine and play it, which the vast majority are. So you don't have that kind of problem to the extent that you did with Nintendo, where they pretty much said, oh, well, sorry for you. You got to buy it again. And that's the biggest frustration. It isn't that the game isn't available, let's say. Let's say it was let's say you actually bought a Wii game, which I don't think you could back then. Actually, I'm positive you couldn't. So let's say you bought a Wii game, let's say Mario Galaxy on there digitally, which I know you couldn't. Then you wanted to play Mario Galaxy later, you technically wouldn't be able to. Even though that game is available on the current Switch store. If that makes sense. That actual game technically isn't. It's part of the Mario 3D All-Stars. But that same kind of concept where the game is available on, take Super Mario World. That's one of the few games I actually bought back on the Wii because I had one of the Nintendo shop cards, where you got like 2,000 points or whatever for $20. Because that was before you could really, I don't know if you could go back on there and actually pay with a credit card at the time. I don't remember. Regardless, I didn't have a credit card at the time. So, points cards, that was it. But I bought that on there. I believe I could play it on the Wii U, if I remember right, and I'll have to go get my Wii U out to check on this. But I'm pretty sure I can play it on the Wii U, through the Wii channel on the Wii U. But I know I can't get it on the Switch. Now, of course, on the Switch, I do have Switch Online, and that's a major change, and I think that's a good change to be able to have that content. But it would be nice if you could purchase it outright also. But it is what it is. And to get back to the eShop closing, I want to come down and look at one thing. Because as of right now, Nintendo's saying that you will be able to continue, you won't be able to make purchases, but you will be able to keep downloading your content. So if you did purchase something on the Wii U, you can still plug your Wii U in, go back on there, and re-download it. Or if you ended up buying a new Wii U and you need to log into your account, yada, yada, yada. That's all fine and dandy. But we come down here and we see how long will it still be possible to re-download previously purchased content in the Nintendo eShop for Wii U or the 3DS family of systems. How long will those systems support online play? The online play is another point I'll bring up in a minute, but for the foreseeable future, it will still be possible to re-download games and DLC, receive software updates, and enjoy online play on Wii U and Nintendo 3DS family of systems. Okay. Two things. Number one, for the foreseeable future, you'll be able to download those games. We don't know how long that'll be. That might be 6 months. That might be 10 years. Who knows? But it's an interesting point. If they're closing the store now to download, for purchases, I wouldn't think that that's that far behind. We'll see. Honestly, I don't think a whole lot of people are still using the Nintendo eShop. I know I never use it on the 3DS. But one thing I hadn't thought of until I just reread that is how long will systems support online play? Now, traditionally for like the Wii and all, not that big of a deal. But the first thing that comes to mind with that is Splatoon. The first one was one of the first games that I can really think of for a Nintendo console that you needed online play for. There had obviously been quite a few by then that required it for Xbox and PlayStations and all that, but until this time, this was by far the biggest that actually required online play for the main part of the game on a Nintendo console. The first very much major title. And it did surprisingly well. Now, I know, I'm trying to think back to, it's probably around the time that the Switch came out. Around that time, I remember trying to play, and it might have been a little after, I had tried to play Splatoon on the Wii U, and it took forever. And I tried a couple different times of the day, but it was taking forever to try to find a party. So that's the kind of the problem. You say it's kind of depressing to see that this is ending. One day, obviously it will. Not today, but it does seem to point to the end being near. But at the same time, you got to remember: is there anybody really playing? And we've seen that a lot with other online presence type things like this, where it's sad to see it go, but at the same time, were you really playing it anyway anymore? Especially I know Splatoon 2, I think is it's been a little bit slower, but on the Wii U, on the Switch, Splatoon 2 always found games faster than I think it ever did on the Wii U, even when Splatoon maybe the first couple weeks or months after Splatoon came out. It was just, there's such a small ownership of the Wii U, and then let alone to have it, you actually having to have that game and being on at the same time. You see how narrow your market's starting to get to actually find a pool of people to play with. So anyway, long story short, it's unfortunate to see, not very surprising, and especially we saw, I think it was the Vita not too long ago, announced that they're closing their online marketplace. Also not very surprising. That was another one similar to the Wii U, where there wasn't a very big base for the console. And it's unfortunate. But we are, probably 10, what are we at? 10 plus years, I think now? Right about, gotta be a little more than 10 years from the time the Wii U came out and the 3DS. So it's time, I think. It's unfortunate, it's sad to see, but it's time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.